This week on the latest episode of The Big Show, it's been almost 2 years since we entered the pandemic era. We've experienced a myriad of changes of how we ingest content and how it has changed our viewing habits. Is the age of the movie theater a thing of the past? We will discuss this as well as review the latest film in theaters this week, Moonfall. We'll have all that and more on episode 489, Keeping It Real with Film Gordon. Let's go. All right, and welcome to the latest episode of Keeping It Real with Film Gordon. I am Tim Gordon. I am joined, staring away into distant space by my friend, the man I call Chuck Chill Out, Pastor Chuck, Charles in charge. It is Charles Kirkland Jr. What's going on, brother?
Hello, Tim. How are you?
If you watch the show last 2 or 3 years, you'll know that Charles is the worst at his greeting. Just all I tell you every week is just pick one, man. Just be consistent. I start off every show the same way. Hi, I am Tim Gordon. There's a pause. Throw it to Charles. We give you this wonderful kind of lead in, and then Charles messes it up with something. Howdy, hi, dude. But you know what? You are consistent in your inconsistency every week, man. So what's going on, man? How you doing? You good?
I'm doing. Oh man, if I could only tell you, but it's been a wonderful, an interesting week. I can say that. Lots of heartbreaking and high moments, and that's just how life is.
There it is, man. All right, man. So we have a lot of discussion around today's show, which was the tease that we opened the show with. So we'll have that. You've seen Moonfall. I'm being real transparent right now. If you're looking at me, I'm gonna get into the camera so you can look at my face and see. I'm not trying to be in the movie theaters right now. I'm gonna send Charles Kirkland to the movie theaters. Not that I value Charles's life less than mine. I'm just making a personal decision. I don't want to be in the movie theater right now. So you probably won't be hearing a lot of reviews from me unless it's stuff I'm watching at home. All right. So having said that, let us get into show today. Charles, since it's Black History Month, I made it a habit every year that we've done this show that we want to spotlight agents of change, difference makers, living legends, folks who, made an impact in our culture. And I found a good one today. This gentleman, I must admit, before a couple of days ago, I had never heard of this guy, and you told me you weren't familiar with him either. So let's introduce him to the audience. And when I mean introduce him, he's not coming on Zoom, but we're going to talk about him right now because I know people are like, well, let me see who you're talking about. Today, we're going to spotlight Floyd Norman, an African-American animator, writer, and comic book artist. Over the course of his career, Mr. Norman has worked for a number of animation companies, and among them Walt Disney, where he became the first Black animator who worked for Walt Disney. And he worked for Disney up until Walt Disney died in 1966, and then he left and did some other stuff. But since he's worked for Pixar, Hanna-Barbera, and a bunch of spots, he is still alive and well, living in Santa Barbara, California. He is 86 years old now. And the reason why this one really got me is that we run the Black Reel Awards. And for us, we're about saluting Black achievement. Man, so if you're watching this show, it won't be coincidental in, say, Charles, 6 months that Floyd Norman is going to be getting an award from somebody. I'm going to talk to some people to see if we can make that work. Charles is laughing because he knows that some people is the guy that's talking. So we need to spotlight Floyd Norman, man. My God, how did I not know this? How did I not know this fact, Charles?
He's like the hidden figures of the animation. This dude's been there since the beginning almost.
He started working for Walt Disney in 1957 on Sleeping Beauty, which they released in 1959. He became the first African-American artist to remain at the studio on a long-term basis, and following his work on Sleeping Beauty, he was drafted and returned to the studio after his service in 1960 to work on 101 Dalmatians, which was released in 1961, The Sword and the Stone in 1963. Wow. That's pretty impressive, man. He does. He's a guy that deserves a story of his own. So yeah, that's absolutely amazing about Floyd Norman, man. And I again, I was told as a child, Charles, that you should learn something new every day. And you shouldn't just learn something or like one thing new. You can learn multiple things, but this would definitely serve as one thing new I have learned today. And I hope we introduce Floyd Norman to members of the audience who are not familiar with his work either. I mean, you're familiar with his work because you watch these movies, but we weren't familiar with the person behind who was producing the work. So I think that's absolutely amazing, man, to me.
Well, I know one thing. Floyd Norman was not there when they did Song of the South and Dumbo. So
he was not. He was not.
I'm thankful that he came on board when he did.
Wow, man. So it also says, and I'm gonna leave it alone. It says he is also worked on motion pictures for Walt Disney Studios and Pixar, having contributed creatively as a story artist on films like Toy Story 2, Monsters, Inc. for Pixar, and Mulan, Dinosaur, and The Hunchback of Notre Dame for Walt Disney's Animation, among others. So that's absolutely fantastic. We salute you, Mr. Norman. Life well lived. I apologize. I didn't know. I mean, you can't get on me if I didn't know. I didn't know. So Charles, do you have anything else before we dive into our show today? Because this is really a good conversation to have. And we're going to have it not with facts and figures. You know, I'm not here to tell you that we've had this percentage of drop off. And no, this is going to be a conversation between two people who belong to a major film critics association and what we've experienced over the course of the last 24 months. So Charles, before I start, do you have anything?
I just wanted to give my commander salute again to Floyd Norman for the work he's done. So let's
you see that Marine Corps salute right there for people who at home didn't know I was in the Corps. You know, I've been out 1988, so it's been 30 years. And on command, look, still got it. Never goes away.
So you can be a commander.
You stupid, man. We don't have commanders. That's the Navy. But let me just start by saying I had a conversation with a studio publicist yesterday, and she and I hadn't talked in over a year, right? So, and we were catching up yesterday, and we were both lamenting the change that has occurred in our industry. Now, there's been change in a lot of other industries, but I'm talking specifically today about film and television, and more specifically about film, right? Charles, you will remember that once upon a time, and when I say once upon a time, I'm talking about like once upon a time in 2019, you and I routinely would get emails about screenings for upcoming movies, right? And we would sit up, every Friday, and we would kind of go, okay, well, on Monday, I've got to be here at this time to watch this movie, Tuesday here at this time, Wednesday here at this time, etc. I think for the most part, sometimes there were screenings on Thursdays, but Monday through Wednesday was your really heavy screening time, right? And all of a sudden, I remember you and I were attending the New African Film Festival in Silver Spring, Maryland. Remember that?
I remember.
And we were literally in the middle of the film festival. I think there was like still another week left in this film festival. And I never forget, I tell this story all the time to you. And if you're just watching the show for the first time, you're hearing this. It was a Saturday afternoon, Charles, true story. And there was a screening. I'd gone to Silver Spring here in Maryland, watched some movies. You and I saw each other during that day. And they had another slate of movies that Sunday. And I was like, I I'll check those movies out. I'll be back on. I'm gonna take Sunday off, and I'm coming back on Monday, and I'm gonna watch some movies. And I remember coming back on Monday afternoon to the AFI Theater in downtown Silver Spring, Maryland, and there was a sign on the door. Charles, remember this? All films have been suspended. I said, suspended? What do you mean? And it was dark, and it was funny because I don't ever remember having been to a movie theater. Now this was in 2020. I had never been to a movie theater in the middle of the day that was dark like that. I was like, it's kind of interesting. Who would have known, Charles, that when I drove away from AFI that day, that our world would just change, man, like just like that, like in a snap of a finger. I remember you and I sitting at having conversations because we had been at DC radio like that previous week, had done our show. It was a Friday. There was no indication when we walked out the door, like, man, this will be the last time we see this place, man, until I don't know when. So
still haven't.
Yeah, and still haven't been back. And I think part of why I wanted to have this conversation is because I had been thinking in my head that, it's almost 2 years now. And I remember, when this initially happened, Charles, people were talking about the pandemic that we had a century ago that lasted 3 years, from January of 1918 to December of 1920, right? And I'm thinking, man, are we gonna be down for 3 years? That was 2 years ago. 2 years ago. So the fact that we've lost, I don't know, Charles, what the number is. I'd say 750,000 Americans have died, and that's not counting the numbers worldwide. Despite the fact that we just went an entire year where people kind of hunkered down and theaters were really dark and a lot of things streamed, I think the studios now are trying to slowly bring people back. And from what I'm hearing, it hasn't been that successful. I mean, here we are in early February, and outside of the one blip that I tell people, because that's the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Marvel is almost pandemic proof right now because people will put their lives on the line to watch a Marvel movie. I don't know what that says about us as a people, but people will go to the theater for bigger films, Charles. So as we kick off this conversation to kind of lay the groundwork of, as my good friend, or not in my head, my good friend Amber Ruffin would say, how did we get here? So this is how we got here, right? But Charles, moving forward, man, in Washington, D.C., the market that we're in, we've lost, in 2 years, we've lost Mazza Galleria, which was a multiplex that we spent a lot of nights watching movies in, or screening films. We've lost the Uptown Theater, which had been in D.C. since 1929. It closed in 2020?
It was 2020.
2020 it closed. And I'm trying to think, Georgetown, we still have that theater. We still have Gallery Place. We still have, what else do we, is that it? Is that all we have in DC now? Just those two theaters? We had East Street. We had East Street and Landmark Atlantic Park.
Yeah. Well, and then you just had Arlington Cinema Draft House open.
No. I said in DC.
In DC, the
Arlington Cinema.
Alamo Cinema and Draft House. Just open.
look, Charles. Do we? Because before the pandemic, it was lightly attended. But yes, that theater is in town. So please, I already know the publicists over there. Do not call me up and clown me. I'm like, do we really have that in DC? But I'm just trying to tell you, man, that it is very jarring right now. I think the last screening I went to in a theater was in December. And the reason I'm not going back in the theater, Charles knows the story, is because we went to a screening to see Spider-Man No Way Home, and somebody in the theater had COVID. So we got a text message a couple of days later, like, go get yourself checked. And I was like, you won't be seeing me for like at least 3 months. You bring an event movie back in and I'll be back. And so Charles, again, my lead in right now is that I believe that there are absolutely movies that belong in the movie theater. I absolutely do. I think big spectacles, if you're talking about Dune, you're talking about Spider-Man, any Marvel film, Star Wars, yes, those movies absolutely belong in the theater. But now that we've gotten our viewing habits shifted by Netflix and Amazon and Hulu and all the other streaming sites that exist now, I don't believe every movie needs to be in a theater. And I was in my feelings last year. I'm not even going to tell you what the movie was, but I remember they invited us out for a movie, Charles, and I drove all the way over to Tyson's Corner in Virginia. And I walked out and said, man, you could have put that thing on a streaming service. I didn't need to come to the movies for that. You brought us out here for this. Charles, what are you thinking about? I'll start where we are right now. And a lot of the points that I've addressed as it relates to film right now and the evolution in real time that we're experiencing with our feelings about cinema and the long-term health of cinema.
Well, first of all, you mentioned Spider-Man, and Spider-Man has become the butt of many a joke because it was the Monday after Spider-Man debuted that the Omicron virus exploded. And for whatever reason that may be, but everyone says, oh, it's because all them people went to see Spider-Man in the theaters and then this virus exploded. So, I mean, we've turned the corner, I think. And I've had an experience, like we're going to talk about Moonfall today, but when they first told us that we were going to see Moonfall, it was supposed to be a press-only screen. Next thing I know, I'm getting text messages from emails from the DC Film Society that they have tickets to this screening. I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on? And yeah, I go to the screening and all of a sudden the theater is packed. It's not a press-only screening. There's people there.
You didn't tell me that.
Huh?
You didn't tell me that.
I didn't tell you that? Oh boy.
Wait a minute. So, you went to a day screening of a movie with a packed theater.
Yes.
Oh, I'm staying home, bro. I'm good.
and it was kind of like I didn't know this was happening. When I got there, I saw all these people and I had this wave of anxiety pass over me as, do I really want to sit here and watch this movie? Because all going on, it's terrifying. It's a little scary. I haven't had COVID like you have, and I don't look forward to contracting the illness. So it was with great trepidation that I did sit down and watch the film. But that's where, I mean, as a film critic, I went to another screening the next day that was just press only, but I'm terrified of going to these large screenings with all these people in it that I don't know, I can't trust, and not like I can trust all of the media, but it's where we are today. It's kind of horrifying. I'm like, and on top of the fact that we become so used to having screeners sent to us and having, we can click on our computers and watch the screener or watch it on our television at home. Now you're asking us to go back to the theater. I'm with a lot of people. I'm like, I'm not sure. It's just it's weird. It's a weird area. I remember, and you were talking about the New African Film Festival. You skipped out on Sunday, and I went in on Sunday, and I spoke to the director of the festival, and he told me that night, I don't think we're going to be back tomorrow. I don't think we're going to be back tomorrow. And I said, well, we'll see. And sure enough, there was nothing happening. And there's been nothing happening. And I can't believe it's been 2 years of this. But here we are. And who knows what's next? I mean, March 4th, we have the Batman coming out. And I know a lot of people want to see this movie, but this movie is almost 3 hours long, 3 hours of being in a theater with a bunch of people. it's like Spider-Man all over again. I don't know. We're going to have another outbreak. Who knows?
All right. So first of all, man, I laugh a lot. You did not tell me that you showed up for a screening in the middle of the day. Okay, let me tell a quick story, and then I'm gonna get back to you showed up at a crowded theater. Several months ago, in the middle of all of this, right? There was a screening because we had gotten to a point for a minute, Charles, if you remember, that they were slowly trying to bring movies back, but the way they were getting us to come back is that, as you said earlier, they would set up two different types of screenings. They would have a screening for the press, which normally happened in the daytime. I've gone to a bunch of those. There's no more between 7 to 10 people will be in a 150, 200 seat theater, right? Plenty of room to spread out, right? And then they would say, we're doing promo screenings where they would do what you just described, where they would have members of the press mixed in with like a group of winners or people who show up at the theater, right? And I remember one night, Halloween, they had a screening of Halloween Kills. And I was like, I ain't got nothing to do. It's right down the street from my house. Let me go down here and pop in and go see Halloween Kills, right? I showed up at the theater, Charles, and it was just like you described. It was a packed house. I'm trying to sit in the middle. Hold on one second. I can actually demonstrate what I was doing in the theater. Just pull the mask out. So I'm sitting in the theater like this, and I'm sitting in the middle of the theater, and I got space around me. So I'm like, all right, I'm good, right? And next thing you know, it's like 10 minutes before the movie. Big couple sits right next to me here. Somebody sat next to me here. Half the theater had masks on, the other half didn't. And that anxiety you talked about, man, I literally freaked out. I couldn't get out that theater fast enough. I was like, man, get out. I know this movie's called Halloween Kills, but I don't want to die. I'm not trying to make light of it, but to your point, I think it's really funny that, it's well documented that, we have half the people in this country who have been boosted and, have been vaccinated and boosted, who walk around, protect themselves and other people wearing masks. And then you have a whole huge contingency, which is probably the other half of the country, who are anti-vaxxers and don't feel like, it feels like it is an infringement on their freedom, that people are trying to make them put things in their body, which again, I can respect that, right? You do you, right? I'm gonna do me over here. Me and Charles are wearing the mask. We're gonna protect ourselves. If you not, you be over there, you do you, right? But my issue is, and this is, I'm speaking now because Charles always teases me about what hat that I'm wearing, right? Because I got a lot of hats, right? So I'm gonna put on the hat, as I'm saying this, Charles, as the president of the Washington, D.C. Area Film Critics Association, better known as WAFCA, right? Putting on my WAFCA hat right now to tell you that one of the ongoing struggles for me as the head of a film critics association has been defending members of our association. When I tell people that, we show up at movie theaters, it's work. So like Charles and I love movies, or other members of WAFCA love movies. But when we show up at the movies to review a movie, that's a job. People are writing reviews. People are, we have members in our association who appear on television and have to give reviews. I'm on radio, television, sometimes over at WETA, PBS doing reviews. It's work. When I show up at the movie theaters, I'm not at the movie theaters because it's a cool thing to do, because it is. It's a job. It's work, right? So
most of the time,
yeah, most of the time. And well, actually, it should be all of the time, because if only time you're not working is if you're just going to the movies just to go to the movies. But I'm saying when we show up at screenings, it's work for everybody.
Right.
But Charles, my point is that getting back to your original point about this Moonfall screening that you talked about, that they kind of did a bait and switch and didn't tell you anything. To be perfectly honest, and I've done this before, if I was feeling that much anxiety, might not have seen that movie. I'd have been like, y'all can have this when y'all let me know how it works out, because I'm not doing it. And I think you have a lot of people, Charles, which is why we're doing this show today. You have a lot of people who still aren't there. They're being to a level of comfort that you feel like you want to be in these public spaces and put your health on the line to watch a movie that, as you said perfectly a couple of minutes ago, all last year they sent us links to all these movies. So the secret is out. That every movie there's a screening link. There's not a movie that exists that doesn't have a screening link. And you know how we know? Because we lived last year when you sent us every movie. Matter of fact, watch this, Charles. I'm reaching. This is what they call a screener. I have a whole cabinet here of screeners that they sent me, that they usually send every year, but they sent screening links. Look, Charles is holding up screeners, right? Come on, man. It's not a mystery. There are movies that you can send screenings to. Now, my theory, Charles, and I think the reason why they are not offering as many screening links this year as they were last year is because there's this feeling that, as you said earlier, and I disagree, that we've turned the corner. No, we haven't. We haven't turned the corner. I think the only thing that's different now than it was a year ago is that when Tim Gordon caught COVID, there was no shot that was available. Tim Gordon was quiet because people were dying of COVID when Tim Gordon got COVID. So Tim Gordon, I'm talking about me in the third person because this is a real fact, and I don't know if I've ever said this. There were several celebrities that literally caught COVID around the time I caught COVID that didn't make it. And I remember they kept going on Facebook going, I caught COVID, yo. I'm fighting this thing out. And then like 2 days later, it'd be gone. And I was like, I ain't saying nothing. Look, Charles, I was like, I ain't saying nothing. I caught COVID. I was like.
Look, Tim had COVID, and that was when I guest hosted the show because he was like, I'm not even coming on the air. I'm not doing anything. I'm like, it's video. He's like, no, I'm not doing it.
Dude.
I'm not doing it.
So I was blessed enough, man, to come out of it. There's been some long-term stuff I've had to deal with, which is very real. And I've had fights, Charles has joined me. There's a group of men that I talk to every week. And I've had animated, passionate discussions about, people who, oh man, it's just COVID. You get a shot, you be all right. Yeah, really? Because I don't know that. Like now, if you get the vaccine and get boosted, you might be all right. But there was a time before there was a vaccine, there was no guarantee you were going to be all right. And my point is that, even another colleague of ours that who's done our show as a friend of ours, and I'm not going to put his name out there, caught COVID, and he's running around talking about I've been boosted. But even he told me, he was like, yo, man, if I didn't have that vaccine, I don't know if I'd have made it. So I'm saying all of that to say Charles has been blessed enough to have never gone through that experience, right? But man, as a guy who has this whole, let's take it back to the movies again, right? So now you're asking me with my Film Critics Association hat on to encourage members to come back to work in what we sometimes deem as an unsafe work environment. Because if you're putting me and other critics in a room, even with ourselves, right? Because, Charles may be asymptomatic. Who knows, right? Charles has never had it. Tim has had it. Charles needs to be protected from me. I need to be protected from other people. And then when you add in these other screenings that we talk about, the promo screenings where you're bringing in total strangers and we don't know any of these people. And now in our state, Charles, remember, I can't speak for DC because I still think that DC has a mask mandate. Am I correct?
They just dropped theirs.
Oh, they dropped theirs too. Okay. And Maryland, I know, dropped theirs. So now you're going to the movies with people like that situation I described earlier, where you got half the theater that could be vaccinated and masked up, and then you got the other half. I just don't know how we're going to get through this because, to your point, the super spreader event, which was Spider-Man, I'm like, I don't want to be in another one of those situations. And to your point, Matt Reeves, the Batman, is coming out on March the 4th. The only way they're going to get me to see that, no, I'm being real. The only way I'm going to see the Batman is that if they're doing a press screening, and I need to know how many press people are going to be there. Now, as a rule, I'll start to say their name. The PR company that sets this up, stop laughing. The PR company that sets this up has been really good about, hey, if I call and go, hey, man, what's the situation? They will tell me. I don't know if they'll tell Charles, but they'll tell me. Tim, we're doing this amount of people. I'm like, okay, I guess I can go for that because I can do that. But all these other movies y'all are putting out there, I'm like, if Charles ain't seeing them, they do not get reviewed on this show because I'm not going. If you don't have a link, I ain't going. I'm like, this is February. See, Tim is now in his 30th year as a film critic. And I say that not to brag, but I'm saying that to say that I understand the patterns of how we do this job, right? I know that the first quarter of every year, Charles, let's call a spade a spade. Let's call it what it is. There's a lot of bad movies that are in the theater between January and March. Am I incorrect? Am I incorrect, Charles?
You are quite right, sir.
Right. There's a lot of bad movies. So you can miss me with being at the movies on a super cold night with a bunch of people that I don't know, trying to watch a movie where there's laughter, people talking to each other, coughing, which happens all the time in the movies. It's not like this is a sometimey thing. I'm pulling my mask like. So I say all that to say, man, when we talk about the future, so the whole point of today's show is talking about the future of movie theaters. So to answer this question properly, Charles, I guess I'll pose another question to you. 100 years ago, we've already talked about the Spanish flu and how it ripped through the globe. And like there were so many people that died, 3-year period here in the States. After that was over, of course, the Roaring 20s kicked off. And, nobody remembers that prior to the stock market crash in 1929, there was the Harlem Renaissance. There was all kinds of stuff that happened in the 20s that was real fun and sexy. But before we got to the fun and sexy, there was a lot of pain with that pandemic of that time that lasted those 3 years. Now, history has shown us that it has happened once, and anything that's happened before can happen again, right? Because we kind of operate in a cycle. So better days could be ahead. My issue with it is that there's been, with the introduction of so much technology, I was talking to a filmmaker the other night, Charles, who told me that he discovered Zoom for the first time in 2016 and immediately told his agent, man, you better buy some Zoom stock. I don't know if this thing is public yet, but I think this is going to be the next best thing. And he told me, he's like, Tim, I made a lot of money off of Zoom. And I said, I salute you for being ahead of the curve. I think there's a couple of things I think, Charles. I think that the longer this situation goes on, you have a lot of entities that are holding on, bro. I told you, it's not just, this is an isolated thing. Like Washington, D.C. has lost several multiplexes and theater houses, right? And I'm sure that you multiply that across the country of different theaters that have gone under, right? So here we are now 2 years later. And the longer this slowdown continues, the more things will be altered. Like we'll continue to lose businesses. People will kind of evolve into different things. And I think the evolution that we're experiencing right now with streaming services, because you remember, Charles, there was a time, and I was talking to my friend about this a couple of days ago, that you would look at stuff on Hulu and Amazon Prime. He was like, there's some movies over there. Those aren't the real movies. The real movies at the movie theater. That's just some stuff I watch when I'm home. Man, now that stuff that we used to watch that wasn't real movies, there are a lot of real movies that come on streaming services. We're in the golden age of the streaming service right now, Charles.
Halle Berry just sent me the Netflix trailer for the 52 movies that they're going to do next year. They did it last year. They did said a movie every week. Well, they're doing it again in 2022. And Halle sent me, because one of her films is in the group of all the movies that they're doing, not all of them, but a lot of the movies that they're coming out with in this upcoming year. And some of them look like they could be bangers. Knives Out 2 is going to be on Netflix. It's not. I'm like, there's a lot of stuff now that you don't have to go to the theaters for. But the other thing about it is, it's kind of weird how old things become new. I used to go to drive-ins when I was young, and now drive-ins are starting to make a little bit of a resurgence, because it gives you that ability to be in your shell watching a movie and still have that communal experience with so many other people, that you're starting to see it pop up more. You have the pop-up that does, I think it's in Angelica downtown. Of course, there's Benji's across in Baltimore, and then others just keep popping up. So that might be another avenue in which we head toward. Maybe we might start seeing more drive-ins coming back.
Well, I agree with you on that, man. I just, it's really interesting, man. I mean, I'm not going to tell my age, but if you can look at my chin, I've been around for a minute, man, and it's very interesting when you are a person of a certain age and you can remember certain stuff. And then you think about not just where we are today, but how things have evolved so much, I would say over the last 30 years, because you got to remember, Charles, and let's be real, if you lived in the 1980s and was a person of age, there was no internet. We didn't have, these devices now that we call cell phones. None of this stuff existed. I remember and again, we are having a show talking about the future of movies. So I just don't want to people tune in and go, well, how did we get over here? I remember working as a radio producer when I was producing the morning show here at Howard University Radio. And I remember, Charles, I used to have to carry around three things: a pager or a Palm Pilot, pager, and a camera. And I remember looking at it one day going, man, it is such a pain in the butt. I can't wait until the day that they can combine all this stuff into one thing. Wow. Who knew that was coming down the line? So when I think about the evolution of the thing, man, I think that, as a person who grew up from the age of 5, so for 5 decades, man, I've been a guy that loved movies, man. I love sitting in the theater. There's nothing sexier to me. Back in the day, and when I say back in the day, this might have been like 3 or 4 years ago, when I just needed to relax and unwind, it would be nothing for me on a Saturday afternoon to go someplace like out to Fairfax, Charles, out to the Mosaic, and just sign in, because I didn't have to pay, but you sign in, and they'd be like, "What movie you want to go see?" "Yeah, I'll see that one," and then I'll sign in again and go see that one, and I would love to sit in and I'm being real, I love to sit in a theater. It didn't have to be empty; it could be some people. Carve out me a space, grab me a pack of Twizzlers, because how I am with my Twizzlers, a cherry Coke, and just sit there, and some popcorn, and just sit there, man, and just kind of like take my mind out of it for 2 hours, man, and just watch a movie. I love doing that. And could watch, we laugh now about when I go to film festivals and you watch 4 or 5 movies a day. 4 or 5 movies a day is normal, because 4 or 5 movies is what I would do on a weekend. Going to a Cineplex early in the afternoon. When I come out, it's dark outside. I got a belly full of junk that I've been eating all day. I've seen 3 or 4 movies. I feel halfway decent. I'm thinking on the way home, that movie, that was really interesting. I love the execution of that story, that character. So I miss having the experience of sitting at a movie theater. I really do. I mean, despite the fact that I watch all these movies at home, it's just not the same. Home is too comfortable. Home, when I'm watching a movie, Like here, I'm sitting there, well, like where we're doing the show, I can watch movies in my office here. It's just not the same. It's not the same. And I absolutely miss it. But Charles, do you think movies will be one of those things that is old that at some point may come back around again, that let's say the model changes and people get accustomed to watching movies at home, and then at some point the new cool thing will be is you got to get out to a movie theater, man. You can watch movies on the on the big screen, not just 85 or 120 inches in your house, but the big screen.
I I always say that there's something about that experience, just being in a theater, and even when you have promo screenings where you talked about where the press sits with with all the other people, the winners, and just other people who get to see the movie on at a screener. There's something about being in one of those screenings where you can gauge how a movie plays to people other than outside of yourself that just can't be replaced. And even when I screen movies at home, when I'm watching them, I feel like I need to have somebody with me. So I don't think that the experience of a theater can ever be replaced or forgotten. It may wane at times, but there'll always be something that brings them back. We've had 3D that come out, and that was hot for a while to bring people. You got IMAX theaters that are hot right now. Um, in the future, we may be having these 4D theaters where you have a fourth experience other outside of the visual. It may be an auditory or a sensory perception that gets involved as well. There's going to be something in VR. Who knows? There, but I don't think the theater experience will ever die totally. I think that there'll be people who, just like now, in the middle of a pandemic, we had 250 million people show up to watch Spider-Man in the theater. It's going to be the same when we have the Batman. It's going to be the same when some other movie comes down the line, because there are people out there who just enjoy that experience too much to let it die.
Well, and then I want to remark on one other thing that's deeply personal to me that I absolutely miss, right? We talk about, I talked about earlier about missing the experience of sitting in the theater for 3, 4 hours, or actually 3 or 4 movies at a time. But the one thing I do miss, and I'm trying not to tear up as I say it, because this is really something that the pandemic has taken away from us that I think has really separated us, is the family atmosphere. Not just family of like my family, my blood family, but my film family, right?
Right.
So we belong to, like most other people around the country who live in individual cities or specific cities, belong to film critics associations, right? And it would not uncommon, and Charles knows that I'm telling the truth, that we would show up for screenings and they would be press only screenings and there could be 40 people in the room. So you get a chance to sit there before the screenings, and we would all kind of get into our groups. You dapping everybody up. Hey man, what's going on with you? What's going on? Bro, you been good? I watched that review you did last week. That was hot. Or we'll talk about stuff we watched, or just family, our lives. The fact, man, that I can't connect and see Travis or Nell or Rocky or Julian or you understand what I'm saying, Charles?
Yeah.
And we haven't had. I mean, we sporadically have had that experience over the last 2 years. Like maybe if it's a Tenet or if it's some other movie. Like I know we had it around Spider-Man, and there were a lot of critics that came to that screening. But that I really do miss, man. The ability to check in with people, the ability, as you said, Charles, to stand out in the lobby of Mazda Galleria after a big movie is screened and everybody's in groups talking about it. Well, I liked it too. Now, what did you think? And Charles, am I lying? These are
Oh
real
no, you're
things.
quite right. I mean, and I loved being the fly that flitted between the groups. I would talk to these guys and then go over there and talk to those guys. I saw Nell last night for the first time in God knows how long. You're right. Just to see our community again, And when I'm talking about our film community, just to see, I saw Julian last night and I got to rib him about his script that he wrote. And it's just, I mean, those are the things that the ancillary things around the movie experience that we're missing right now. And as you can send me a screener at home, I love to have the screener, but yes, yeah, I'm going to go to a theater when I can, and if I have to stake out my space because I've been hoodwinked into a combination promo screening, and I'll put my jacket in this seat and something else in this seat so I have some room beside me. I'm going to try it. I'm going to do it, but I don't think the experience can be replaced.
It's interesting, man. I think about, I'm talking about Spider-Man, and again, we're talking about the history. What are we thinking about as the world has evolved over the last 2 years? And I told you at the beginning of the show, there's not numbers involved. This is all emotion driven. It actually is. It's all emotion driven because it's what Charles and I are experiencing. And I love the phrase "in real time" because it is in real time that this is happening day by day. We're watching this, but I was going to say before Spider-Man, I think the last time that I saw a bunch of my colleagues together, and especially Charles, you were out in Middleburg with us when we did all those panels and stuff. I remember sitting on a panel, I think me, Nell, Travis, Susan, might have been somebody else, or just maybe the four of us. But that family atmosphere, because again, it's so funny. I tell people that, there was a time, when we were doing this stuff, and depending on the season, and what I mean by that is like when you get to award season, before we had this real kind of like avalanche of film screenings, we had to go to the movies to watch these movies. This is before Charles was even in our group. I remember, years ago when we first created WAFCA, like in the early 2000s, you would know that once you got to December, that last week, because we normally cut off our voting, or the end of the year is usually like that first Friday in December. So it was known to the studios. And Charles, there used to be a time when we would have to see 3, 6, 9, 12, 13 movies in 5 days. So you would see 3 movies a day, Monday through Thursday, and then they would slip. And I'm sorry, 14, because they would slip 2 movies in on Friday. So they'd have one at 10 and one at 2 because they knew the cutoff was 5 o'clock. And I remember those years, man, where everybody kept dragging themselves back and forth all week. Everybody would wake up and you see them in the morning drinking Starbucks and with red eyes. And back in here for 3 more today. I know, man. I know it's tough. So it has been an evolution, and I've watched it evolve from that to now, last year when everything was totally shut down, and then back to this year where we're totally not there yet. And, I don't know if we'll ever be able to reclaim our community in that way. And that makes me sad because there are people that I haven't seen in a minute because we just either, they're not coming to screenings, or I missed the one they came to, they missed the one. People haven't seen me. They're like, where's Tim? Home. So it's a rough transition, man. And you know how sometimes we say in church, man, this is not about me. This is for a ministering to somebody else. There are film critics that I'm sure that will watch this, and you will feel me. This is like a soul punch that, I'm telling you something that to be fact, that this is not a comfortable place for us. And I think you can say that for almost any other industry, man. There's other industries out there where people aren't comfortable with the changes and evolutions, or how things are kind of evolving in their fields. I'm just not really comfortable with our evolution because I just don't know where it's going. I understand what the major studios want because for them it's about box office receipts. But you're fighting an uphill battle, man, to Charles's point, where Netflix is putting out a movie a week. You're fighting I don't know, man. I don't know, Charles. As Marvin Gaye said, what's going on, man? Where are we going? Where are we going? Where's all of this, Charles, going? Where's it going?
and you have things like what happened with Disney, where they tried to follow the Netflix model and show everything on their streaming service, and then they got beat up by Scarlett Johansson and forced to put movies back in the theater. I mean, I don't know how they're going to compete, but I mean, I understand what they're going through, but it's going to be a hard compete.
Well, I think, you know, when you talk about Disney, I think Disney ultimately is always going to be all right, because Disney, more so than any other studio that's not Netflix, has, you know, what I call a three-pronged business, right? So they've got their own classic stuff in their animation division that is legendary and unparalleled, unmatched. They also have two properties that they've invested in the last 15 years that are among the best in the business in Marvel and Pixar. And Lucas, I'm sorry, and I left out Lucasfilm. So Disney is fine. I think about some of these other studios, the Warner Brothers, the Universals, and some of these other major players who, it's a challenge, man. I mean, you know, I think about people like Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise made two movies, or has two movies, that he's continued to push back and push back and push back. Top Gun was supposed to have been out like 2 years ago, and it has still not seen the light of day. Mission Impossible, whatever number it was, it's the other movie that's just not seeing the light of day. We went through where they kept pushing movies back, going, you know, we think is a good time to put it out. And, you know, you're just going to have to live with the fact, and we will find out, Charles, because right now you're right about Omicron. Omicron is still out there and it's blazing the trail, but there's always another strain of this thing. And every time there's a strain, there's another shutdown. Hollywood is in a shutdown mode now, because when you talked about, we were in LA for the celebration of Black cinema, who knew that early December that would be the last live event, and we still haven't had any live events in Hollywood since then. And that was early December. So it's been 2 months ago when that occurred, that there was no Critics' Choice Association. I just read last night that the big Grammy party that Clive Davis has every year got postponed. I was talking to Sean Edwards, who's on the board of the Critics' Choice Association, about their show, which is coming up in mid-March, and he's like, it's 50-50 right now. I'm like, bruh, this is what I'm trying to tell you. So in the spirit, the entire show is in the spirit of all these things that we know, all the things that are personal to us. This insistence that, like, hey, man, we're not sending you no screen. If you don't come to the movies, you're not going to see it. Okay. Look, y'all, okay. That's how you want to play it? I'm safety first. Safety first. So Charles, man, you know, I keep throwing it back to you, man. I'm like, Charles, I realize a lot of this is rhetorical. We don't know. It's just a feeling. What feeling do you have about everything we've discussed today, thinking about your overall situation and thinking about, you know, the timing of the year? You know, there's really not a lot of quote unquote premium titles that are out there right now. For me, it makes it easy for me to sit at home. I understand that you're trying to get your review numbers up. You do you, pimping. So what are you feeling, Charles?
I'm feeling. It's to be honest, some of the numbers are coming down. I mean, I think they were talking about in DC, the area, the hospital people, the numbers have been down lower than it's been in quite a while. I haven't heard anything about a new variant coming in or anything. I may be behind the times. I might have missed it, but I haven't heard anything. And I've said the words before, turning the corner. So, I mean, when the Spanish flu, it was 2 years before life started getting back to normal. I think maybe by the time the summer rolls around, we might be back to numbers that are I don't know, so minimal that people feel like they can actually do things again. So I live in a position of hope that things are going to get that things are going to get better sooner than later. I mean, we've done 2 years. I say maybe 6, 7 months, 8 months more. We could be finished with it. I don't mean finished because I don't think it'll ever go away, but I think we'll be to a point where people will be confident to go out again. And you talked about Mission Impossible. It's 2 Mission Impossible movies now that are being backed up because Tom made 2 back to back. So he's got 3 films in the hopper just waiting to be disseminated. So we can only go so far, or so long. I don't know. I'm just at a point of optimism that we could be getting better with this.
Well, we got a couple more minutes left in the day's show, and I'll just share with you that one of the challenges that I have, in addition to my lack of desire to be in the movie theater, is that we have 2 award shows that we produce every year and a film festival. And this year, the film festival and the second award show, which will be the Black Reel Awards for television, will take place in mid-August. And we're at that point now, we're 6 months out, that I've been having conversations, and it's just very difficult to even plan. So I'm listening to Charles go, yeah, man, in 6 months, man, we'll be back. And I'm like, I've heard this song for the last 2 years about, in a couple of months we'll be back. I don't know. And I think for me, the biggest challenge is as a planner is that you're putting something together. And I've seen this happen to too many people. South by Southwest was one where they lost their shirt 2 years ago trying to put that festival on when all the sponsors pulled out at the last minute. You talked about earlier this year, the Critics' Choice Association was supposed to have had their show first week of January. They had to scuttle that. So many things can look good, Charles, up to the last minute and go, nah, not exactly. So as a person that has to plan stuff, I'm very sensitive to that as well. So that's another part of, I guess the best word would probably be the anxiety of trying to figure out and predict that, like, should we be like AFI? That AFI was like, we're just going to take the year off. We'll be back in 2023. We're not even going to try to do anything this year. So I don't know, Charles. I mean, we've discussed, do we do hybrid? Do we, we got a festival, an award show. Do we try to do the award show live, the festival online, virtually, like we've done it? I don't know. I mean, there's so many things that need to go into the planning of doing some of these things. And this uncertainty around all things film, whether it's in the movie theaters for screenings, in the movie theater for general releases, in the movie theaters for festivals, all of this uncertainty just kind of has him feeling some kind of way. So Charles, basically, as I opened the show by saying that it was going to be an emotional issue, it felt very therapeutic in order to talk about a lot of these issues, because these are things that we've shared as a community with one another. I hope it worked for you like it worked for me. The only thing would have been better if I could have been laying down doing this show. I'd have felt like it was therapy.
On the couch.
So unfortunately, we didn't get to Moonfall. But you can go and read the Moonfall review on thefilmgordon.com. Charles, it is always good to ride with you, brother. And as we tell the people every week, man, please see something good at the movies. The movies can be in your house. Please see something.
Let me just say this before you sign off.
Go ahead.
Moonfall is not the movie to go see, break quarantine. Just stay home. There you go.
Thank you. I love that review. Don't put your life on the line for Moonfall. All right. Until next week, Charles. We'll see you guys on the other side. Man, as always, Charles, great job, bro. You enjoy your weekend, man.
You too. All right.
All right, man.